Oh, Lord. Oh, good God. Citrus, you had one job. You had one thing to do, and that was deliver on hot lesbian action. You had to do this one thing. Just make these two girls sexy and make them do dirty stuff. No one cared about your plot. No one cared about your character development. No one cared about any of that. All you had to do was make these two girls seem hot, and you failed. You failed miserably. You failed horribly. And everyone pretty much seems to think your anime is bad. Some people actually think it's legitimately harmful. And I am here to do the post-mortem on this anime, because I kind of think I have a very interesting approach to critiquing this thing, which we will get into in a minute. First up, I would like to say that I'm going to go into some mild spoilers. I'm not going to spoil everything, but you either watch this or you don't care. So, also, I have decided for this review, I'm going to get candid. I'm going to get R-rated, and I'm going to talk dirty. Many of you may be like, oh, you curse all the time. I mean, I'm going to get into, like, the sexual stuff in this anime and how it either succeeded or failed. It mostly failed. So if that bothers you, that's totally fine. I completely understand how that hearing all that stuff might not make you feel comfortable, how you may not want it or care about it in your anime. I totally get that. You are free to leave this review. As for everyone else, welcome aboard! Oh, God. So first up, when this anime was announced, I think we all had the same reaction. Ooh, lesbian action, yeah! No one looked at this and was like, this is going to be the series that's going to bring LGBT relationships into the world of anime. This is not the thing that's going to get the representation that the gay community deserves. No, we looked at this and we thought it was going to be a kinky type sort of fun, goofy type series. And they didn't deliver on this in many regards. So treating this like a standard review, let's start off with the plot, because our problems kind of begin and end there. First up, this show is about this girl named Yuzu, whose mother marries a guy that Yuzu never met, and Yuzu now has a sister who is living in their house, Mei, who she also had no idea existed, because that is something people do. Yuzu now has to go to a new school, to which Mei is the queen bee of, and also this school is of course a big rich kid private school where everyone dresses drab and boring and sticks to the rules, and Yuzu's gonna come and flip things upside down. Yeah, you've heard this premise a million times before. But again, you're not watching this for the plot. You're watching it for the dirty shit, which nothing dirty happens for most of the first episode. Like, it's literally just establishing this plot and introducing plot elements, which would normally be the thing you do, except everything is so standard and generic, which made me think, oh, surely this is going to be more of like a satire. The show's legit comedy will come from this. There's no way they're doing something this cliche. And believe it or not, for the first few episodes, I genuinely believed that it was satirizing or deconstructing in a weird way, because they introduce a lot of generic dumb plot elements in the show that they just kind of get rid of quickly. Like, that takes balls. Like, there's stuff in this show you assume would be the whole show that is just gone. Like, early on, Yuzu being like this Gyaru who wants to sort of make everything like her and go against the rules. Actually, as the show goes on and she matures, she kind of starts being in this middle ground between the two, and it's represented in the way she dresses and acts, and that's actually kind of clever. You also have everyone at the school is against her. Well, actually, no one even ends up really caring, which I liked. You have it that Mei is in an arranged marriage with the hot teacher who is actually just marrying her to get to the family fortune, and Mei's grandfather, who's the head of the school, of course, hates Yuzu and wants nothing to do with her. Well, that also gets resolved within the first couple episodes. Again, that's not something you see a lot. Usually these shows cling to those overly used plot conveniences and plot lines, and this show just kind of got rid of that. So I thought, oh, this is kind of ballsy, because it means that now you have to go off in unique directions. They don't do that. They just keep introducing more dumb plot elements and then just kind of getting rid of them in weird random ways that are unsatisfying. So from a structural standpoint, the show doesn't even work. Oh, and they never really fully satirize the generic plot. It's just kind of there. Once it's dealt with in the first 4 episodes, everything else about it executes itself the standard way. And then we get into the other thing, and that is Yuzu and Mei's relationship, which is supposed to, based on what you would assume, be sexy and cool, and you see the opening, and they're like sticking their tongues in each other's mouth. It's like, yeah, fuck you, society. No. So yeah, many people already know that this anime the first episode, nothing overly sexy happens until the end when Mei, for reasons never fully explained, pins Yuzu down, sticks her tongue in her mouth, and forcefully makes out for her for a good solid 30 seconds. This is uncomfortable, this is not animated well, this is not put together right, the music is completely off, everything about this scene fails, and you slowly begin to realize that this is actually an abusive relationship, and a bizarre one at that. But again, because, as I saw, they were doing these sort of interesting things with the typical plot elements, I assumed this would follow suit. It's not. It's literally just there, and it's played straight. And again, Yuzu, after being basically sexually assaulted, and she gets sexually assaulted a lot in this show, like, she is Law & Order SVU material. After this happened, she's like, I didn't want my first kiss like that. And then literally she starts thinking she's in love with Mei, and that she liked it, and all of a sudden she's a lesbian. This is a problem for many reasons. First up, the legitimate ones. You've probably heard this get brought up, and that is that the show really puts LGBT relationships and people in a very bad light. Mei just forces herself onto Yuzu, who then just sort of goes along with it and lets herself just sort of be assaulted all the time. This is very dangerous, considering many LGBT relationships have to be quiet and private, and thus dangerous things can happen. So when you see a show that kind of endorses that, even though I don't normally think that people react that way when they see these negative things in anime, I think most people just forget about it. It is a little dangerous when you have something that is a legitimate issue like this. That's all I'm going to talk about politically, I swear. From there, it also doesn't make sense because we never established Yuzu feeling attracted to Mei, so when Mei assaults her, I see no logical reason for why Yuzu shouldn't just freak out, and her transition to kind of wanting it and being into it is also not very well handled. On top of that, we never really go into Mei's mind or understand her personality, so I don't understand why she is sexually interested in Yuzu. Yeah, I think Yuzu's design is pretty, but there's really no logical reason for any of this. And while we're on the subject, let's get into the technicals of the whole thing. And that is that the way the lesbian stuff in this show is animated is maybe some of the worst animation I've ever seen in my life. For starters, it's not drawn sexy. Like when you look at sexual scenes in anime, there's not a lot that treats sex maturely. But if we take something like Scum's Wish, or crap, there's really not a lot of good examples. But if we use Scum's Wish, for example, a darker drama series dealing with kind of a similar subject matter, and that being a sexual teenage relationship. In that show, they knew how to make it look sexy. Like, literally, when people start fucking, it is frickin' hot. Like, and they go into that adult stuff. The way the camera follows them as they make out. The way every time someone removes an article of clothing is made to be like the hottest thing in the world. This is represented through beautiful animation that shows the details of everyone's body and how they sort of react to things and why they're attracted to each other, as well as spending a lot of time in everyone's minds trying to understand their thinking patterns and why they believe things the way they do. That is how you make sexuality work. You also have a nice score in the background that also sort of gets you in the mood. In a way, you are also kind of getting turned on. You may not have a physical reaction, but it keeps you invested. In Citrus, most of the time when they start making out, there's so many bizarre cuts and edits in a scene, it really doesn't allow you to really enjoy anything. On top of that, they never really do anything overly sexual besides them forcing themselves on each other, which is creepy and doesn't really give you anything. Shut up, phone. On top of that, you have maybe the most bizarre background score I've ever seen, because it literally feels like scores from other animes of different genres. Like, there's this weird sort of folky sort of score that plays a lot in the background that sounds like it belongs in a fantasy type anime. Like, I even thought it was from something else, which it very well could be. On top of that, because the two never really do anything overly sexual, there's nothing to really remember about it. Like, using my Scumswish example, that is an anime that treated sex very maturely and went into stuff. Like, I think there was a scene in that anime where, like, a girl gave a guy a hand job. I think I remember correctly, there was a scene where, like, dude was eating pussy, girl sucking dick. Maybe I'm over-exaggerating, but this was an anime that dealt with sex. Citrus doesn't deal with sex. Like, literally, the only time one of them ever really is about to is May takes her shirt off at one point, it's just there in her bra, and those are not sexy titties. Like, these girls, they have pretty designs, but they're not drawn sexually, which is a problem when that's the idea of your show. There is literally a scene where Yuzu is naked, and it has the worst butt shot I've ever seen. Her butt is literally just a U. I know this is sounding weird considering I've gone off on how I don't like ecchis in the past, but this really was a failure in every sense. There was nothing really that turned me on at any point. Also, May looks like Lelouch, which, considering the fact she's basically just emotionally abusing Yuzu and just using her for her own weird desires, kind of makes the whole thing feel even creepier and worse. So why was Citrus possible? Well, it's kind of one of those shows that if you do see it, you kind of feel like you gotta see it to the end. If you're genuinely appalled and pushed away from the dirty stuff, shut up. I can understand that, and you probably should be, but a part of me was like, I kind of got to see where this train wreck is going. But yeah, all in all, this was a boring show with a bad plot, bad characters, bad story, and the one thing it was supposed to do, the bare minimum, it couldn't even accomplish. I think you needed a more interesting director who could maybe do better with the source material. I looked the director up, and most of his stuff is just generic ecchi crap. There's really nothing about this guy that could do anything unique with the plot or the characters, or even just draw him sexy. The show looked so flat and boring. But what did you think? In the comment section below, give me your thoughts on Citrus. If you thought that the show maybe could have been fixed, if you feel that it is genuinely inappropriate and a bad influence, and let's not get too political, let's keep it fairly light. But as always, click to like, click subscribe, and let me know what anime you'd like me to talk about next.